Good afternoon. This video lecture is on the DS101 project that you're going to work on. So I'm going to use the detailed outline that I've posted on SACCT to walk you through the process right from scratch to finish. Okay. So this is what we want to do. The first thing that you need to do is to think of a question. And I'm going to use the housing data or the housing problem to discuss this problem. So let's say that the question that we want to raise and execute and implement for the project is the following. What are the determinants of home prices in all counties in California for the year 2010? That's the question. Okay, so I'm going to write the question on the board. Question. That's step one. Okay. What are the determinants? What are the determinants of house prices in California at the county level for 2010? Okay. That's a specific question that we are trying to answer using regression modeling. Keep in mind that this is a multiple regression modeling project where there's going to be one dependent variable and several independent variables. And to be more specific, 5 independent variables. Okay? So think of the question, and then the next step will be to think of the variables. Think of the variables that will answer this question. Think of variables. Think of variables. So we have one dependent variable, and 5 independent variables. Okay, 5 independent variables. So the dependent variable that I'm going to choose is based off the idea that we are trying to explain sales of homes, or it could be prices of homes, or number of homes sold, single-family homes, or townhomes, or apartments, whatever the case be. So the dependent variable is going to be the median sale price. So some variable that talks about the sale price, the average sale price of homes in counties across California. So median sale price, and this is for 2010. And then you have a set of independent variables. And so what are the independent variables that I'm going to select? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the independent variables that I want to select are the following. Say for instance, foreclosure, population, and then perhaps crime, could be permits. Some other variable that one can take is, for instance, electricity consumption. Okay. Electricity consumption, and this should be it. Okay. So here's the question. Here are the set of variables that we have selected. My dependent variable being median sale price of homes in each county in California for the year 2010. And keep in mind that the other variables need to be for the same year. It cannot be for a different year. So step 1 is to think of the question. Step 2 is to get the variable information or the variable data from the California Rand statistics. And so let's go to the California Rand statistics and walk you through the process of getting the variable information. And so California Rand is here. And then what you want to do is click on some of the tabs here. So for instance, if you click on Community tab, you've got a number of variables here. You have a number of variables to choose from, and you have to look around and check for variables that are of your interest. And so under other, you've got housing prices, and so we look at housing prices. And so let's go to that tab, housing prices, and then what you see here are so many options. And so in the first box right over here, what you want to pick is, say for instance, average price per square foot for all homes. Okay, I'm picking that as my dependent variable, and then I'm going to highlight all the counties. And so starting from Alameda, and so how do you highlight all the counties? Press and Control, and then highlight the first county, and then scroll down, and then highlight Nevada. So do it again, and so Shift, and then you have to press your finger on Shift, and then highlight the first county and the last county, and all the counties are selected. Likewise, you do the same thing on the second part, starting with Orange County, and then scroll down while keeping your finger on the Shift button, and then Yuba. So all the counties are selected, and so then you scroll down a little bit on the page, and then you have to select the year. And so if you look on the right hand side of the page, this data is available at the monthly level. And so you want the data for the yearly level. And so what you want to do is start from January 2010, okay, January 2010 to December 2010, and then make sure that you maximize the number of hits. And so maximize the hits to 5,000, and then on the left hand side there is a tab, a button, where you select the format for the data in which you are going to download the data. Okay, so choose a format for the data, and so I'm going to download the data as a comma delimited import to spreadsheets. So download the data the way you are comfortable. You could do it tab delimited or comma delimited. And so let me try comma. If it doesn't work, then we go back to tab. Okay, and then hit submit. And then this opens up in an Excel file like this. Okay, so you would notice that there is a lot of information here. All of the information is not needed. Okay, all of the information is not needed. So what you want to do is delete some of the columns that we don't need. And so you would notice that at the end you have an average column and a total column. And so we're going to delete all of the monthly information. Okay, all the monthly information is deleted. This column is deleted as well. You don't need this 2010. You don't need these columns as well. And so what you have is the following is the average price. So you can rewrite median sale price, average price, 2010. Okay, and the first column is your county name. All right, and then you can save this on your desktop, and let's call it. You can change the format from CSV to an Excel format, Excel 97 2003, house price, and that should be it. Okay, so you've got your first column information downloaded. You would notice that some of the counties has the NA label, meaning that it is not available. And so part of the time that you will spend on is cleaning up the data, making sure that the information is aligned. If there's missing information for any county or several counties, those counties will need to be deleted. Okay? Alright, so having said that, let's look for some more variables at California Rand Statistics. Okay, so we go back and look around for more information. let's say that we want to take a look at a number of crimes in California or domestic violence. So let's take a look at domestic violence. Okay, so domestic violence, there are many types of subcategories of domestic violence variable that is reported here. Let's say that we just take total calls, and then we select all the counties. Okay, all the counties, while keeping your finger on the Shift tab, and then pick the year, that is 2010. 2010, maximize the hits, and then download the data as comma delimited import to spreadsheet format. Submit, and then it opens up as an Excel file. It might enlarge it a little bit, and so you've got the total number of calls for domestic violence. And so what I'm going to do is copy this information and put it on my other sheet, and put it here. And so this is domestic violence 2010. Okay, so likewise you need to build up your database. So let's go back and look for some more data. And this time we are going to look for perhaps information on housing foreclosure. Okay, so housing foreclosure is here. We are doing the dependent variable for all homes together, for all categories of homes together. So we are going to get a matching variable, number of foreclosures for all homes. Okay, and then likewise download the data for all counties. So shift the first county and the last county, shift Orange County and Yuba County. All the counties are selected. Scroll down, and then this data on foreclosure is available at the monthly level. So you have to start from January, and then the year has to be the same, 2010, December 2010, and then the number of hits is maximized to 1000, and download the data to comma delimited import to spreadsheet, and then you submit. Okay, submit, and open the data, and then again this data is quite detailed. This is monthly data. And so what you want to do is delete most of the columns here, all the columns that have monthly data. So delete this, and then what you want to do is copy the last column, that is the total number of foreclosures in various counties in California. Okay, and so I'm going to minimize this and go to the other Excel spreadsheet, and then just copy it. Okay, so I'm going to copy it here, copy it, and so this is foreclosure 2010. Foreclosure 2010. And then I'm going to wrap this, and then perhaps expand this, and then bold it so that we know what the variable names are for each of the columns. So you've got county, and then well, this is not needed, so we can delete this as well. So we've got the county name, all right. I think I might have the wrong. No. So this is the correct. This is the correct sheet that I'm working with. So go back here and then paste it on this cell, on this sheet. And so this is foreclosure 2010. Foreclosure 2010. I'm going to wrap this, and then wrap the text, and then bold it. Okay. And some of the other sheets are not needed. Okay. Some of the other sheets are not needed, so I'm going to just delete it. I don't need that. And this one is not needed as well. I don't need that. So here you have three of the data variables needed for the project. Okay. the dependent variable, and you got two independent variables. So now we are looking for some more independent variables. So let's go back to California RAN and look for some more variables. And I don't see any variable that would make a lot of sense. Perhaps population density would be a variable that, of concern, of some utility. And so let's explore population density in US states. And so population density, the fourth tab, population density, and we want the data for California, so continue by selecting California, and then select all counties, and you want the data for 2010, select 2010, 2010, maximize the hits, and then download the data in comma delimited format. Open the file in Excel. You've got this column copied and put it on the other sheet and paste it. This is population density for 2010. Population density 2010. I'm going to wrap the text and highlight it as well, and then I'm going to save it. Okay, I'm going to save it. So I've got four independent variables so far, and one a dependent variable, and so my database is building. Okay, I'm getting the variables that I'm looking for. Some other variables that I want to examine for this project that deals with energy. So we go to the energy tab, and then under the electricity tab here, look for electricity consumption by county. And so let's click on this one, and then you have some choices. Since you're doing housing, why not pick residential? Okay? Or you could pick electricity consumption per 1,000 people. So pick this one, or you could pick the other one, just simply electricity consumption, the average electricity consumption in each of the counties in California. And then we go on to pick the counties, all of the counties in California for 2010, and then pick the year. The year has to be the same. Okay? The year has to be the same as the other variable years, or the years for which you've collected the data for different variables. Maximize the number of hits, and then download the data, comma delimited, import to spreadsheets. Submit, and then open in an Excel spreadsheet, and then here you've got the information that you want to copy, and it's this one. So I'm going to copy this on my other sheet where I'm saving the variables and the variable information. So copy it. And so this is electricity consumption, electricity consumption for 1,000 population during 2010. Okay, so what you want to do is delete. There's some extra. Alright, so you've got the information that you need for electricity consumption, and then perhaps you want to look for another variable that is on the board. And that has to do with permits, or residential permits. And so we look for that other variable. So I'm going to delete or just remove this file. We don't need this file anymore. Alright. From time to time, save the master file, or the file where you're downloading and copying all the variables, because you don't want to lose them. Since you're spending so much time in getting the data information. So going back to California RAN, now we're looking for information on permits. So Where can we find permits? Perhaps under business and community permits, U.S. residential construction, and so, or new construction permits in California counties and cities. And so, since we're doing housing, let's select total building permit valuation, or simply total residential housing permits. Okay, and then highlight all the counties, and then pick the year, that is 2010, starting 2010, ending 2010, maximize the hits, and then you download data as a comma delimited import to spreadsheets, and then submit, and then open in an Excel and enlarging the Excel screen a little bit so that you can see the variable. And so I'm copying this last column and then pasting it on my master file. So let's paste it here. Paste it here, and so this is residential permits, 2010. And I'm going to wrap the text and highlight it, rather bold it. So I've got most of the variable information that I need for this project. It is always a good idea to have a couple of additional variable information in case when you run the model after collecting all the data, if any of the variable does not look good, the results are not turning out to be what you expected. So you have some additional variables that you can input and delete the variable that is not giving you good results. And so having a couple of additional variable information doesn't go sour. It always helps at the end. And so have one or two more variable information. The other variable that you want to think about in your project or for your project is the variable that has to do with dummy. Okay, and so as I said the other day in class, dummy variables are not variables that are dumb. Dummy variables are variables that are essentially, these variables are essentially categorical variables, meaning that you don't have actual data for that variable, but you have to think of a way to characterize the variable so that the stat graphics program can read it, can recognize it. And so here's what I want to propose. Let's say that we want to examine the effect of, say for instance, coastline on housing prices. We know for sure that homes, same size homes, that are located far away from the coastline and a similar size home that is located right across the coastline or even 15-20 minutes away, half an hour away from the coastline has this added advantage of this amenity of this coastline and how it affects people's qualities of life. They might save electricity, or they might go for a walk, or they might have picnics on the coastline or on the coast. And so coastlines are an added advantage, and that kind of pushes the price up. And so a similar size home in Sacramento would not cost the same price in San Diego or for that matter Los Angeles or for that matter San Francisco. And so having a coastline is an amenity, and that pushes up the price. So what if we want to study the effect of coastline on home prices? How do you include that variable? And so what you want to think about is perhaps creating a dummy variable, a dummy coastline variable. Okay? Dummy coastline variable, C-O-A-S-T, coastline, a dummy coastline. Okay, a dummy coastline variable. And the way we want to think about a dummy coastline variable is by making this argument: all counties that have a coastline get a value of 1. Okay? All counties that do not have a coastline gets a value of 0. Okay? And so if you do not know where all the counties are located in California, perhaps you want to take a look at a map. And so here is a map of a county map of California. And so what you can do is go county by county and then put zeros and one in your Excel spreadsheet. And so Humboldt gets one, Sonoma gets one, Monterey gets one, Santa Barbara gets one, Ventura gets one, Los Angeles County gets one, Orange County gets one, San Diego gets one, and all of the other counties that are away from the coastline gets a value of 0. So you use zeros and one to demarcate, to delineate, to report on your Excel spreadsheet using zeros and one to record which county has a coastline and which county does not have a coastline. And so Sacramento County does not have a coastline, so you put a value 0 relative to, say for instance, LA, Los Angeles County that has a coastline. Likewise, San Bernardino does not have a coastline, and so it gets a value of 0 relative to San Diego that has a coastline. Okay, so you create an additional column and put zeros and one by looking at the map of California at the county level. This has to be done right in order to capture the effect of coastline on home prices. So after you've cleaned up the data, and your data should look like the following. Okay, your data should look like the following. This is what a cleaned data should look like. And so for the project that I'm working out the data set for you, this is what it should look like. And so the first column will be the name of the counties, and then I've got median sale price for 2010, foreclosure 2010, population density 2010, domestic violence 2010, residential housing permits 2010, electricity consumption 2000 for per thousand population during 2010, and then I've created a coastal dummy with zeros and one. So the zeros and one are predefined. It doesn't have to be one for counties that have a coastline. It could be the other way around as well. And so counties that have a coastline, you can put 0, and then counties that do not have a coastline can get a value of 1 as well, as long as you are consistent. Okay. So once you've got your data in this format, you are ready to import the data in stat graphics and run the model. Okay. So once you've got the variable information collected and downloaded from California RAND or perhaps other sources of data such as the Bureau of Economic Statistics or American Fact Finder or Census or California.gov, the Finance Department, or some other source of data. I mean, you can do the project, say for instance, for 30 different cars. Okay, and so to give you an idea that you can collate and collect information on 30 different cars, perhaps the make of the model of the car, the price of the car, the mileage on the car, vintage information, how long has the car been used, so on and so forth, and basically run a model with the idea that you're trying to determine what the cost of the car is in today's prices. And so the current price of the car is a function of mileage, vintage, insurance that the owners paid in the past, so on and so forth, and all of those factors will determine the current price of the car. And so this could be an interesting project to work on as well. So I was just throwing an idea for somebody to grab and work on it. So once you have the data on this, on the housing problem, you are ready to move to the next step. You are ready to move to the next step, and that is running the model. So let me clean the whiteboard. and then talk about the next step. So the next step would involve the following. So the next step is step 3. Step 3 is importing. Import data and stat graphics. Okay, import data and stat graphics. Import data and stat graphics, and so this is how you import the data and stat graphics. So you open a stat graphics empty page. Okay, so let's go to stat graphics and open up a blank page. All right. All right. So what we want to do is we go to File, Open Data Source. So here are the steps. File, open data source. File, open data source. All right, so file, open data source, and then pick external data file. And then the next step will be to pick external data file, because Excel file is not a stat graphics file. External data file. Okay. So click on the external data file. Okay. And then browse to the location. Okay. Where the Excel file is located. So it is in the desktop, all files, and I had named it a housing data 2010. And so open it. Okay. All right. So external data file, and then housing data 2010. So this is your Excel file. This is your Excel file. So you open and import the Excel file into Stat Graphics, and this is what it is going to look like in Stat Graphics. And so you save the Stat Graphics file so that you can open later on and run them on it. So it's saved forever. Save as, save data file on your desktop, and so save it, or on your USB drive or some other external hard drive where you can keep the data till the end of the semester. Okay. So we have the data file that is converted into a Stat Graphics file, and so what you want to do now is think of the hypothesis. So step 3 is importing the data in Stat Graphics, and then the next step will be step 4 will be to think of the model. And so what I'm asking you to do is run 2 models. I'm asking you to run 2 models. Okay. So this is a multiple regression model. And so this is how you're going to write it. Median sale price 2010 is equal to beta 0 plus beta 1. What are the variables that we have? Beta 1, population density, plus beta 2 foreclosure plus beta 3 domestic violence 2010, foreclosure 2010, and then we've got two more variables, residential electricity consumption, and so beta 2, beta 3, beta 4 electricity consumption 2010 plus beta 5 permits, plus beta 5 permits plus the other term. And so this is the model that you're running for the project. And so you are going to run two models. Okay, I call the first model the simple model, and I call the second model the complex or the modified model. Okay, so in the first model, which is a multiple regression model, you have the dependent variable, which is median sale prices for 2010. That's your dependent variable. And then you have a set of independent variables, and these are population density, foreclosure, domestic violence, electricity consumption, permits. These are the 5 variables that we're going to use as the independent variable that explains the variations in housing prices in all counties in California for the year 2010. Okay, and so that's your first model. Okay, so I'm going to call this model 1. Okay, so this is your basic or the simple model. Okay, and then you run a second model, model 2, and this is called the modified model. Modified model. So the equation is going to look like this: median sale price for 2010. This is equal to beta 0 plus beta 1 population density plus beta 2 foreclosure plus beta 3 dummy variables plus beta 4 electricity plus beta 5 permits. And then you add an additional variable, which is the coastline dummy, COAST, coastline, dummy coastline. So this is your 6th independent variable with the other term. Okay. So you're running 2 models, model 1, which is basic, model 2, which is modified or slightly complex because you're using a dummy variable. Now, different groups are going to work on different projects. So it's not a requirement that all of you have to use a dummy variable. You could use a lag or a dummy or a combination of a lag and a dummy in your model, depending on what your project is and what are you envisioning, what are you thinking, all right? What kind of a lag or a dummy are you thinking for your project, okay? So your second model has to contain a dummy or a lag, or perhaps a combination of a dummy and a lag. You could also delete one of the variables that you think perhaps is not very good. It does not give a good result, and so you can remove one of the variables and instead introduce a lag, just as we did the lag problem in the prediction case or the sales and advertisement case in the simple regression example. And then once you have the model set up, it's very easy to run the regression, the multiple regression model in SAP graphics. So I'm going to write down these steps on the board, how to run the multiple regression model. It's simply an extension of the simple linear regression model. So let me clean up the whiteboard. So step 5 is basically about the various steps involved in running the multiple linear regression model. Okay, step 5, running multiple regression in stat graphics. Okay. So we've got the data saved in the format that it is needed. So how do you run the model? And so the steps are the same. We go to relate, and then from relate we check on multiple factors. Okay. So the first step is relate, and then from relate, instead of one factor, we go to multiple factors. Multiple factors. And then step 3, multiple factors, and then you select multiple regression. Okay, so step 3, select multiple regression. And so let's select multiple regression. And then that opens a box where you see all the variables are kind of populated. Okay, so all of the variables are populated in the box over here. So let me position it for all of you to see. And so all of the variables are populated here, and then you have to make a choice. And so pick the dependent variable, put it in the right box, pick all of the 5 independent variables or 3 independent variables, howsoever you want to run. So I'm suggesting that you pick all of the 5 independent variables and put it in the independent variable box. Before you do this, make sure that all of the variables have been converted into numeric. If any of the variable has a character, then it will not be recognized by stat graphics and it will not allow you to run. And so just quickly I'm going to check for all of the variables and make sure that these are in numeric terms. And so checking for variables to see that these are in numeric terms, and so far it looks okay. All of the variables are in terms of numeric terms. Excellent. So once again, relate multiple factors, multiple regression, and then my dependent variable is median sale price 2010. And then the independent variables are all of the others. Okay? All of the others except for the coastline. And then, once you've selected the variables, okay, so step 4, select dependent and independent variables. Okay? Select dependent and independent variables, that's step 4. And then step 5, hit OK. Alright, hit OK, and that takes you to the multiple regression options. Step 5, it takes you to multiple regression options. Multiple regression options. And here you make sure that OLS is selected, constant in model is selected, and that's about it. So make sure that with multiple regression options, OLS is selected and constant in model is selected as well. Constant in model is selected. Okay, so make sure these tabs or these boxes are selected. So we hit OK, and then under tables and graphs, keep the default. So step 6, tables and graphs. Keep default. Keep default. Okay. So under tables and graphs, keep the default. Whatever is selected for the timing, keep the default. And then hit OK. And so you've got the output just as you get the output for the simple linear regression model. And so what we do is the following. Here is your plot of the estimated line. Here are the results. and the results are similar, almost the same as we see in the simple regression case. So I have enlarged the view a little bit. So let's look at the results. Alright, so apparently the numbers are too small to be viewed, but the results are similar to what you see in the simple linear regression output. And so you have the p-values for the independent variables, you've got the sums of squared, you've got the p-value here, you've got the r squared, and you've got the standard divisor. What I would recommend that when you're doing the analysis for the product, make sure that you copy everything above the standard divisor. Okay, so make sure that you run the two models. Okay, you run the basic model and you run the modified model. Copy everything above the standard divisor. Make sure that you provide an interpretation of the r squared. You provide an interpretation of all of these slopes, the intercept. You do a p-value analysis of each of the variables. It is quite possible that some of the independent variables are not significant, they are not statistically significant. Some of the variables might be significant, or sometimes none of the variables are significant, sometimes all of the variables are significant. Provide an interpretation of the r squared, the slope, each of the 5 slopes, the intercept, the p-value analysis of each of the variables, and then run the model for the second time, and this time you can perhaps delete one of the variables or perhaps 2 variables and include a lag or a dummy or a combination of the two. And so you have to think about how you're going to choose the lag or the dummy. You're most welcome to drop by to my office or ask me this problem during class time, and I might suggest you how to perhaps think about a dummy variable or a lag in your specific context. Okay, and so we can talk about this later on. And so what I'm requiring you to do is that you have to run 2 models: the basic model, the modified model. In the basic model, you have 1 dependent variable, 5 independent variables. In the modified model, you use the same data set, but you are including some new variables, such as a lag or a dummy or a combination of the two in your new model or the second model. So you're running 2 models, and you're providing an interpretation of the r squared, the intercept term, the slope term, the p-value analysis, and then making a conclusion as to what you've learned about the product. What you've learned about the product. How does the product or the analysis provide us with a better understanding to the question that we posed early on, which is, what are the determinants of home prices in California at the county level in 2010? And so you might say that, well, coastline gives us a beta coefficient that tells us about the relationship between coastline and housing prices. Or for that matter, crime gives us a negative slope, meaning that for each additional unit of crime that occurs in a neighborhood, home prices drops by so many dollars. Okay, and so you want to provide an analysis of what you have learned from the model in your conclusion. Now, the detailed outline contains several other sections, and so let me quickly go through that. Now, this is how you're going to lay the project. This is how you're going to format or lay out the project. The project is going to be written in 4 to 5 pages, okay? Perhaps in 1.5, 1.5 space, using 11 to 12 font size. So the first page is going to be a title page where you have the name of the project, perhaps your consulting firm's name and the name of your group members. And so I can suggest, or you can perhaps think of names of your consulting firms, such as Elizabeth and McCarter Consultants, Lee and Jasmine Consultants of Sacramento, your name followed by a marketing firm, so on and so forth. And then you talk about the introduction to the project, which means you provide a half a page of a description as to why you're doing this project, what motivates you to do this project. In the context of the housing project, talk a little bit about the general area, let's say California, the Sacramento and the counties around us. Perhaps some highlights about the foreclosures or changing population or the changing composition of industries. And the Sacramento Business Review that we publish every year might be helpful in this, because it gives us some good ideas about what is happening in the area of housing, or for that matter, other aspects of real estate such as retail or office or industrial space, so on and so forth. And so read those types of magazines to get some clue about what you would need to write in the introductory page. As long as you cite them properly, you are fine. The next item in your project is a lit review. I'm sure you're familiar with lit review. You must have done a lit review in your other classes. I'm asking you to perhaps cite two sources of reference, meaning get a second source from a newspaper article, from the Sacramento Bee or the New York Times or the Economist or Business Week or Time Magazine. A magazine or a newspaper clip, or perhaps an article, a journal article, or a book that talks about the problem that you are discussing in this project. And try to relate what that article has to say, and how are you different, or how are you similar to the literature that you are citing. Okay? If you want, I can show you later on how to get material, how to look for journal articles using JSTOR or Geneta or the library research search. I can show you how to do that in order to get articles on topics of interest. And so this I would have to do it during class time. The next item in the project is talking about the problem statement. And so you want to specify as simply as possible, as clearly as possible, what is the question? And so the question is, what are the determinants of home